At least 9 Palestinians have been killed in the Westbank after the Israeli military launched raids and airstrikes overnight. That's according to the Palestinian Health Ministry.
The Israeli military says it launched a large counter-terror operation overnight in 2 refugee camps. Officials say the Israeli military was targeting, quote, Islamic Iranian terrorist infrastructure.
CNN's Paula Hancock is live for us this hour in Abu Dhabi. And Paula, this marks the largest Israeli operation in the West Bank for years. And we understand we are hearing there's been a response from Hamas this hour to what has occurred.
Yeah, Christina and Max, this is certainly a significant operation. We have been seeing for months that there have been these limited operations by the Israeli military into the occupied West Bank. Hundreds of Palestinians have been killed over recent months, since October 7th of last year. But this is definitely something more significant that we are seeing. Now, we did hear from the governor of Jenin that he said just after midnight, so in the early hours of Wednesday, the Israeli military surrounded the refugee camp and Jenin itself. He says that he can still hear gunfire ongoing in the area, so it is believed this operation is still going. And he says a third of the city is without electricity at this point. Now, as you say, we know that 9 Palestinians have been killed. We hear from the Red Crescent Society, from the Ministry of Health, that those deaths happened from airstrikes, also from strikes on the ground. We hear drones are in the air as well. And when it comes to the Israeli response, so far we understand there are hundreds, at least hundreds of personnel involved. We've been told that there are 4 battalions of the border police alone, including undercover border police, and that doesn't include the military and the intelligence element. So this is a large operation. Now, one thing I wanted to mention was a tweet we had from the Israeli foreign minister, which was interesting. He gave a reason for this operation, saying that it was to thwart what he called Islamic Iranian terrorist infrastructure, saying that Iran is funding and arming terrorists in the West Bank and trying to create a situation similar to Gaza and Lebanon. And he said, quote, "We must address this threat just like we're handling terror infrastructure in Gaza, including temporary evacuation of Palestinian residents and any step necessary. This is a war like any other, and we must win it." Now, that is significant, the fact that he's suggesting there could be evacuations in the occupied West Bank, just as there are and have been in Gaza, putting really a connection between those 2 areas and a potential Israeli reaction to those areas. Now, we've also heard from the Ministry of Health in the West Bank that at least 2 hospitals have been blocked by the Israeli military, saying that there have been mounds of dirt, for example, pushed towards those areas. We have seen and obtained video that would back up some of those claims. We've seen some very heavy Israeli military assets in those areas, bulldozers, for example, pushing up infrastructure and pavements and roads in those areas. And we are still getting information and video coming in showing the extent of this operation. But what we're hearing from the Israeli side is that they are trying to end the Iranian terrorist infrastructure, as they put it, in this area. From the Palestinian side, and certainly from those in Jenin, one of the key areas that has been targeted, certainly from the governor, they are concerned about access to hospitals, about hundreds within those hospitals itself, given that they're claiming that Israel has restricted all access there. We heard from the Red Crescent Society as well, saying that their manoeuvring of ambulances has been heavily restricted by the Israeli military as well. Max, Christina?
If this war expands from Gaza to the West Bank, that's obviously a big escalation of that war, isn't it? Does Israel have the resources for that?
I mean, I think they certainly have the resources. It would be a significant escalation. The fact that the foreign minister is connecting the two in such a blatant way on X, formerly known as Twitter, is significant in itself, mentioning potential evacuation of Palestinian residents, something that we have been seeing for months in Gaza and something we are still seeing. The Gaza residents have been moved sometimes a dozen times from area to area as the Israeli military tries to clear out civilians, they say, and target Hamas militants that are within that area, or tunnels that are within that area. Now, if that were to be replicated in the West Bank, it would be very significant, very devastating. When you're talking about these refugee camps in Nur Shams, for example, in Jenin, they are densely populated, a very similar situation to what we see in Gaza, where it would be difficult for them to be evacuated. And of course, there would be a concern if this operation were to be significantly increased by the Israelis, that there would be civilian casualties within that as well. Now, at this point, the Israeli military not specifying how wide this operation is or how long it will go on for, but suffice to say it is larger than we have seen in some time.
Paula, thank you very much. Just to add to Paula's excellent reporting there, that we have had a response from Hamas in the last hour calling for a general mobilization and escalation of confrontation in response to the Israeli operations in the West Bank, although it is hard to see how that retaliation would actually happen given the scale of what has been occurring in the West Bank, as Paula has outlined there.
CNN anchor and chief national security analyst Jim Sciutto is in Tel Aviv. Jim, what are you learning about this operation this morning?
Well, John, it's the biggest Israeli operation in the West Bank since the October 7th attacks. Israeli officials, the IDF, say they're going after what they call Islamic Iranian terror infrastructure. The allegation they're making is that weapons are coming into the West Bank, funded by, facilitated by Iran, and that this attack is intended to target that. The death toll at this point stands at least 9, and what we're hearing now publicly in response from Hamas is calling for a mobilization of its supporters and fighters in the West Bank. So it's a significant operation, and that reaction from Hamas is significant. Israeli officials make the point that the terror environment, the threat is real now. You may remember a little more than a week ago, there was a suicide bombing here in Tel Aviv where only the bomber was killed. So the Israeli officials are justifying it based on the nature of the threat and what they say is the infrastructure building in the West Bank.
Where does this put the hostage and ceasefire negotiations?
Listen, you know, I've covered so many negotiations like this, and oftentimes you will see attacks like this, operations like this in the midst of sensitive negotiations, and it's hard to say which way it will cut. Will it disrupt those negotiations because when you have Israel and Hamas carrying out operations like this against each other, certainly can make it harder for negotiators. Can you make the argument that it allows Israeli negotiators to show toughness in terms of counterterror operations and therefore make it easier to make concessions to bring a deal across the finish line? Maybe. But let's be frank, those negotiations are quite sensitive right now. It's not clear that they are making progress on the most intractable issues. So any increase in hostilities, particularly in the West Bank, are ones that you have to treat as a risk. And it's been notable to hear the Israeli foreign minister tweeting today that Israel should carry out operations in the West Bank like they've been carrying out in Gaza. That certainly would be quite an escalation.
Yes, it would. All right, Jim Sciutto, great to have you there. Thanks so much.